Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Dear brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And welcome to Islamic OASIS Live. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Today we have a very interesting um, uh, host or guest, alhamdulillah. A very interesting guest, actually. Someone, we wanted to bring him on for a while now. Subhanallah, it's been at least 3 months. I think we've been trying to work to bring our brother Mohammed Khan on and to speak specifically on this topic. The topic today is the art of leadership. Brothers and sisters, as you all know, something that the Muslim Ummah is yearning for is leadership. You probably saw, for instance, King Abdullah was in town in Washington. He was sitting next to Trump, and I'm sure many of you saw the behavior of Mr. Trump and Abdullah, and it's kind of heartbreaking, sad, humiliating, to be honest, to see the kind of leadership that we have and the kind of behavior that they display. And so, anytime when we talk to the Muslims about what's taking place, constantly the discussion is, man, we have no leadership. We have no one that we can follow. And hence this is the mess that we are in. So today we have our brother Mohammed Khan. Inshallah, he'll be on in a minute or so. Let me just give you an introduction of who Brother Muhammad is. Over 20 years of experience guiding global teams, having previously working in UK and a decade in the US. He has held leadership roles at the director, head and VP levels in large US companies, bringing a thoughtful and people-focused approach to building successful teams and driving meaningful results. Earlier in his career, Muhammad also had the opportunity to start and run businesses, giving him well-rounded perspective on leadership and growth. With that, we'd like to welcome our brother Mohammed Khan. Brother Muhammad, welcome to Islamic OASIS Live. How are you doing? Inshallah khair. Ameen.
Alhamdulillah, Assalamu alaikum, Habibi Sheikh.
Alhamdulillah. Sheikh, let's get right into this topic. It is an amazing topic, to be honest, and I don't know how much of this we can cover. But let's start at least. The discussion is so huge, it's so wide, it's so I'm sure there's so much to discuss in this thing, and you have a whole presentation ready. Inshallah, we'll put that up there soon also. But first of all, let's get into this. Why is this discussion so important? The idea, the art of leadership itself, meaningful leadership. What does it mean to lead? Why is this so important for the Muslims today, especially, that they need to learn this topic and understand this topic?
Yeah, Sheikh, that's actually a very important question, and as you said, it's one that we could spend hours talking about. But really, the if you look at the essence of it, the reason we need leadership is to make sure that we are all heading in the same direction with the same purpose, and making sure that we can achieve the things that are ahead of us. The task is huge, Sheikh. Where we are, if we look at our Muslims, and alhamdulillah that we're Muslims, and that the Prophet ﷺ has actually left us a lot of guidance and prophecies, that we don't have to wonder and think, where are we, why is it happening to us? If you look at the situation of the Muslims today, our humiliation, where we are, you look at the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, where he basically tells us that, we have wahan in our hearts. Right? That we have a love for this dunya, and we have a hate for dying. And you have to look at other hadiths of Prophet ﷺ that tell you really where we are. That tells you what you have to do. I mean, if our humiliation is a result of our own amal, the Prophet ﷺ has already told us what it is we're doing wrong. We just need to go back that way. It really, in the essence of it, it's that simple. Then the other thing, the important part for us, for Muslims and the leadership, is that again, we lack it. We've got, everyone wants to be a leader. Very few know how to be leaders, right? We don't necessarily follow too well either. Right? And so really, again, the essence is that we need to understand leadership so that we can work as a collective and achieve the goals and the tasks and the mountain that is ahead of us.
So you have this thing. I don't know if Zain, if he can put this up there. But let's get into this, Sheikh. What is the art and science of leadership? Let's and really, I'm impressed. I saw the whole presentation, but so let's do. Sheikh, go ahead, explain this whole point, sure. Because then from there, then I'll have the questions that I have for you. But
of course,
go ahead, Sheikh.
All right, just next slide, brother. It's important for us when we talk about leadership. Most people look at the methodologies that's out there in the world. When you go to the corporate world, they teach you how to be leaders in a certain way. And if you follow that as is, you're just going to end up really following the crowd. And that really isn't leadership. And I'll go into some of the reasons or some of the things that actually happen in the corporate world which aren't real true leadership. So as Muslims, yes, you must understand and go learn the methodologies. Right? You've got to understand the techniques and the frameworks, adopt them. However, you've got to have the mindset of being a Muslim. And so I always start off with just a few reminders of our Prophet ﷺ that I've got on screen here. I'll just read them out. First one is, each of you is a shepherd, and each of you is responsible for his flock. The leader of people is a guardian and is responsible for his subjects. Right. So the concept of leadership from a Muslim perspective is that it's a sense of responsibility, that you have to serve the people, and that there is some accountability for it while you're in that position. I think that's the most important distinction here. That you have this position, but there is accountability, and there's a lot of accountability. So you have to make sure that you do what you need to do, that you come out, as Umar said, if I can come out of this as I went into it, level, right? So it's a big thing. The second hadith Prophet ﷺ is, the leader of a people is their servant. Again, it's important to understand that from a Muslim perspective. And then the most beloved of people to Allah is the most beneficial to others. And the most beloved of deeds to Allah is making a Muslim happy, relieving his distress, paying off his debt, or removing his hunger. Next slide, please. So again, it's very important, and you'll understand why I bring these hadiths and reminders as we go into the techniques and what's surrounding leadership as well. Brother, you can go to the next slide. Yeah. Again, we do not appoint to this position one who asks for it or one who is keen to have it. Sheikh, I think most of us have actually forgotten this. You look at, for example, leadership position when it comes to masajids and the circus that happens there. It looks like they've probably never heard of this, right? So again, an important reminder. And then the other one is, "O Allah, be hard on those who acquire control over the affairs of my people, and are hard upon them. And be kind to those who acquire control over the affairs of my people, and are kind to them." Well, again, so a clear reward, a clear sort of consequence of what you do. And the best of your rulers are those whom you love and who love you, who pray for you and for whom you pray. And the worst of your rulers are those whom you hate and who hate you, and whom you curse and who curse you. And I think, if you were to ask the types of rulers that we have in the Muslim world, I think this hadith, or the second part of it, pretty much tells you where we are. Okay, next slide, please. Again, the next few slides that I have, obviously I can't go into too much details, but I'll touch at the surface of some of the areas around leadership. The first thing to understand about leadership is that it's both an art and a science. And what I mean by that is that, yes, you have to learn the techniques, you've got to understand the methodology, but the art of it is you have to almost have your finger on the pulse. You have to read the situation. And you basically try and influence it. You could be talking to a crowd of people, and you almost read them real time, and you adjust what you say, how you say it, the message, depending on the reaction, right? And take that situation, a scenario, and it basically is across all the board. It's just having that, that gut feel for it as well. So yes, techniques, yes, methodologies, but also you have to have the ability to be able to have, the pulse on your finger, on your finger on the pulse. The other thing is it requires inspiration, influence, and strategic thinking. Right? This is important. Most people in today's leadership have a very primitive view of what leadership is. It's basically, I'm going to stand here and be dictatorial, and you will do as I tell you, and I have authorities, therefore you must respect me. Actually, that's probably the worst kind of leadership. People don't buy into it, don't respect it, and you won't achieve what you're looking to do. So you have to have inspiration. You've got to be able to come up with a message that has some value. Right? It takes people from where they are right now to a better place. You've got to have influence. That's very important. You can't be a recluse. You've got to be able to communicate with people. You've got to be able to, put your points across in a very concise way, in a clear way. And then the other part is, you've got to be able to think strategically. It's not just about the now. You've got to be able to think beyond the now. Right? You've got to understand that you've got to have a clear, okay, what's my vision? How am I going to get there? And where are we in that journey? And how we move forward to get towards the goal that we have. Then the other point that's important is you have to master yourself before leading others. And what that means is really you've got to be able to self-reflect. You've got to measure yourself. You've got to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. And where you have weaknesses, you work towards it. You've just got to be intellectually honest about yourself. A third person look at yourself. And most people find that difficult to do, or they simply just choose not to. Most people sit in a mindset of, it's a strange. I've seen some people that basically, I am the best. Look at me, and really, the reality is, if you were to ask a third person, it's their perception of them will be completely different. So it's really about narrowing the gap between what others think of you and what you think of yourself, and bringing that reality closer and closer together. Next slide, please. Understanding leadership. So leadership is about vision. You've got to very clearly be able to tell people where you are heading. It's not just about tasks or telling someone to do something better. If you look at it from an organization's perspective, you've got to say, hey, this is an organization. We are here today. In 3 years from now, we want to be the largest organization, largest company in our sector. We want to be the most profitable. We want to be the most customer desired company. Right? Whatever your vision is, you've got to have it, and you have to very clearly be able to really communicate that to the people as well. Yes, it's influence, as I mentioned before, action. Right? It's not just talking. You've got to have you've got to stand up, roll up your sleeve, and actually lead. And you have to have empathy. That's important. It's a trait really that's missing in the corporate world altogether in most cases. Is empathy, unfortunately. And again, I mentioned this earlier. Right? It's not about authority. I'm your boss and you must do it. It really, if you want to fail, that's the way you fail. Is you're standing up and basically telling people what to do because you feel you have authority over them. And again, and I think the last point is very important. Leadership starts when things go wrong. You've got to have the ability to lead the way, provide some hope in times where there's difficulty, where there's adversity. And that's really where a true leader comes into play. You can see them, they're basically, okay, they understand what's going on, they can see people are dejected, or the morale's not there, or things aren't going wrong, and they say, okay, let's go forward, let's look at the problem, let's solve this, let's move forward. Next slide, please. What are, again, objectives? You've got to have clear objectives. You're not just standing up a leader just so you feel good about yourself, or to be seen off people, and so you want to look good in front of people. It isn't. Again, I've mentioned that this vision, it's important. You've got to have that clear vision, and you've got to have direction to say, okay, this is our vision, this is how we're going to get there, and this is why we're doing it. It's important. You have to create alignment within teams. I've seen this in so many organizations where you have a leadership vision to say, we're going to take the company in this way. And then you come down 3 or 4 layers from there, and the teams really aren't well aware of what that message or that vision is. So they'll go about and do things in a way that aren't aligned to what that vision is. And that's where you get a lot of friction. And that's where you get a lot of wastage as well. So if you have vision, you have to communicate it in a way not just to the leaders in front of you, but have the method to make sure that it actually reaches everyone in the organization. And then you align everyone's goal to the organizational goal. It sounds so simple, but the reality of the corporate world today is it just doesn't happen. Not at least maybe past the first 2 layers, and then afterwards. It's just people do things that they think are right. And then building a positive culture and driving performance. There's that saying in the business world that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right? If you don't have the right culture, if you don't have values, a value-based culture, you've got to have a clear set of guiding principles and values to say this is what our culture is, and you have to drive people to make sure people adhere to it as well. If you have the right culture, what happens is basically it's almost a glue that brings things together. You'll almost supercharge the performance of your organization if you have the right culture. Next slide. The types of leadership, again, I'll briefly touch over that. You've got the transformational leadership. Transformation leaders really focus on inspiring and motivating people. They drive people to exceed expectations, right? This is what you want to do. You're better than this. We can move forward. We can do better. They set a vision and they challenge the status quo, right? You've been doing something for 5 years, 10 years in this organization. Guess what? We're going to change that. We're going to look at doing things differently. So you have a transformation mindset. The transactional leadership is very much someone who is rule-based. They have structure, and then they reward for it. And they basically say, this is what we're going to do, this is what good looks like, and this is how we're going to do it. And if you achieve it, you're going to get rewarded for it. So it's very, very straightforward. It's transactional. Servant leadership it's really the style that I like. I think this is if you look at the Hadith Prophet ﷺ, it really just aligns with that. You're there. Servant leadership is about what you understand about your own success is making sure that your team and your people are successful. So your success is making sure that people around you are successful. That's servant leadership. And again, in a nutshell. Then you've got the autocratic. They basically make decisions independently. They don't listen to anyone. And they're basically, this is the way, and we're going to move forward. That in some situations is okay, where you don't have time to, drive consensus, ask people. So in certain situations, you've got to be autocratic, say, I'm going to make a decision, but that can't be your leadership style. And then a democratic leadership is, they drive consensus. What does everyone think, right? And we'll take, whatever the consensus is and move forward with that. And really, these types of leaders, they foster a participate environment. So, get involved. Your opinion's important, your ideas are important, come forward. So that's really, again, at a very high level, just touching on the types of leadership types. One thing I want to mention, I think this is probably a conversation you had, Sheikh, about, what's happening in leadership in the US at the moment, there's something called the disruptive leadership. But it doesn't apply to what we're seeing right now. Right? Disruptive leadership is really something where you're a leader that disrupts the market. As an example, if you look at Apple, when we were in the 90s and the 2000s, Nokia, everyone had Nokia phones. That was it was Nokia this, Nokia that, and maybe some Motorola's. Apple came along with the iPhone and just completely changed everything. They pretty much changed the way things are done, and they disrupted the market with something else. Another example is, if you remember the late 90s, there was something called, an organization that used to sort of rent out DVDs, etc. And then came along, Netflix, and now it's completely changed the market altogether. So really, that's some of the things that I thought might be useful to talk about here.
MashaAllah. We still have some more to go to, but we can hold on. Let's hold on. There's Sheikh, today when we're looking at Donald Trump. I mean, I remember talking to you just after he, I think a week later, I was like, Sheikh, what is going on? I mean, because I know you know this subject so well. That's when you said, look, this is, we can consider this to be disruptive leadership. Is that, I mean, and then there are some, there are those who describe this whole thing as transactional. It's about, it's about transactions. But Sheikh, I mean, how much is this thing about really transactions versus making deals, Sheikh? And he's very good about making deals, but is this, the way you describe it, you're saying it's rule based?
I mean, he has a mix of things. Firstly, I think what you're seeing is what could be described as disruptive, but not quite, and I'll go into why that is. Disruptive, as I mentioned, he is going in and he is disrupting the status quo. Things are being done USAID in a certain way, for so many years, as an example. Whether it's their treasury or whatever it is, he's just going in and just shaking things up. We used to do things this way, no more. We have to look at things differently. Right? But for him, it's rather simplistic, and it's not so much inspirational. It's more, how do I get control? And then the bottom line is, how do we basically get a control of the cut costs and basically have favorable terms, which we currently don't. So again, in some cases, it's very transactional.
Let me ask you this, Sheikh. In disruptive, does that usually mean is that innovation? Does that have a lot to do with innovation? I mean, there is something new in the market, and then
absolutely.
Okay, so this is what we're seeing as disruptive. This is not what's happening. I mean, he's not innovating.
No. Absolutely. As I mentioned, disruptive leadership, or being disruptive, is really, if you look at it at a market level. As I mentioned with iPhone or the other things, something, it was done in a certain way. Nokia's, for example, and then came iPhones with their smartphones, and it just completely changed everything. Right. So it is very much thinking outside the box, innovating, and doing things in a different way. The disruption we're seeing is actually in the literal sense of, like a disruptive child. It's really disruptive, throwing things, everywhere. It certainly comes, and I know, it may well be that he has a method that he understands, but his logic, I think he's the only one who understands his logic. Right?
Oh wow! It won't fit in any of these types.
No. It's he has. I personally think he has come up with a method over the years of how he's done business and how he's been successful. Right. I believe he's written a book, something along the lines of the art of a deal.
Art of a deal.
He likes to make deals, etc. And I think for the most part he's using that. So if you, for example, look at all of the sanctions that he's putting in place, I think his end goal is not to reciprocate, the tariffs that other people, other companies other countries have put in the US. He simply wants to negotiate a better term, right? So if he says, we end up with a 10% better deal with Europe or China, that's a win for him. right? Because in his sense, America is winning. We've actually gained something. Therefore, that's a win.
I'm looking at one of your sites, the one that says understanding leadership. And then so you
Mm.
describe leadership is about vision, influence, action, accountability, and empathy. And then you said
Yes.
something this is something that we don't see in the upper echelons, I guess, when it comes to the corporate level. Sheikh, I mean, that's one thing. If you can expound on that. The other thing is we don't see that at all when it comes to Muslims, period. I mean, in our lands, when it comes to Muslim lands,
Yeah.
none of this exists, neither vision or influence, action, accountability, or empathy. So, Sheikh, yani, first, if you can, go into how is it that we don't see that in the corporate world?
Today's corporate world, and I've actually seen this change even over the 20 or so years in the corporate world that I've been there, that really, if you were to describe the personalities of the corporate world today, it's narcissistic.
Elon
That
Musk.
would be, that's really the personality, even the organizational personality is built in such a way that you could describe it as narcissistic. And I'll give you some examples. So it's about self-serving and profit obsessed. That is at the core of it. How do I serve myself, and how do we get more profit? That's really the companies, and it's because the control is right at the top, and only a few people control it. Whether it's the shareholders, even the shareholders, you get even the companies that are publicly traded. Most of the shares are controlled by a small group of shareholders. Yes, you may have thousands or millions of others that have a few shares, but really it's held at the top. They have a superficial social responsibility. And what I mean that is that they talk the talk, but there is no substance behind it, really. There is rampant exploitation of employees. I'll give you the new trend that you'll see as an example. It sort of reminds me of really what we see, the methodology that they have for Gaza, mowing the lawn, right? They come along every so often. Some organizations do it twice a year, some do it 4 times a year. They will come along and they will basically take out a few percent of the people. They say, we look at performance, etc. Really, from what I've seen, it's not.
Sheikh,
I think, go ahead.
I mean, in just last 24 hours, probably good 24 to 48 hours, maybe 72 hours. And I'm sure you're seeing the amount of people being let go from what's considered to be government sector, is what he's saying. He's saying, this is, of course, and not only that, I mean, wiping out of organizations. I mean, there is no more USAID. I'm not going to cry too much about that anyway. But, I'm sure you know what USAID was about.
Yeah.
But, this, so many, especially, I think today they were saying most of the employees that the government let go many of them were already on probation, in the sense that they were just hired first years. And then, so they just let those people go, and they're letting them go in the thousands.
I think the figure I read was 75,000 today. I think
75,000 people let go in one day.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by empathy here? Is that there is no such thing?
There is no such thing, yes. But what I was trying to say really is that you have companies as a rule now, which doesn't exist maybe 10, 12 years ago, is that they will now every quarter, every 6 months, they will just have a group of people that they lay off. And they just
it's a must.
It's basically a continuous. And it's okay if this was about performance. But from what I've seen, it isn't. And what I find is that I have been part of organizations early on that have had to let people go because the company, is not performing well. But they had a very empathetic style of doing it. You would sit down with them, you tell them what's happening, very sorry, and here's something to basically make sure that you're okay for the next few months, etc. What you see today, and we've seen in the last 2-3 years, people who've worked at companies, large companies, for 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, they wake up the next morning and they can't log into their computers. They get an email on their personal emails, let them know you no longer have a job, sorry. There's not even a conversation anymore, right?
Oh, wow.
What it does, though, for the people who are left behind, the impact on them is that it basically it drives fear. If I was to explain, what happens to the corporate within the corporate world and how people feel, really, it's driven by fear. People don't know really; they're always looking over the shoulder. Whether they
Sheikh,
don't know when they're going to get fired. Sheikh.
let me ask you, Sheikh,
Yeah.
how does this affect? Okay, first question is, how has capitalism,
Mm.
um, I mean, it has progressed in certain ways, from materialistic
Mm.
perspective, at least it has progressed a little. I'm not saying that as part of human beings have not progressed for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, we see that
Yeah.
around people finally figured out there's one male and a female or two genders, but you know, but there is this materialistic progress. Uh,
Yeah.
but what we are seeing, meaning as far as how does this type of leadership affect progress? And if it does affect progress, how have they been able to progress so much in the materialistic, well, innovation?
Mm.
If especially if people don't feel, uh, some type of stability or some type of security.
That's a good question. I sometimes, I ask, would we could. I mean, the question is, we've made progress, and we're in the era of capitalism. Sheikh, I think we may have made the progress if it was some other system too.
Mm. Meaning, okay, I see what you're saying.
If it was in capitalism, if it was something else, we may well have come and made the progress regardless.
Because of what?
That's
The need of things.
it is really from a Muslim's perspective. That there is a path that Allah has made for us, and we're following it. In terms of Bani Adam being given the knowledge of all things, and
Mm.
etc. And so we're going to, there was innovation in times of Islam.
Sure,
A
sure,
lot of
sure.
it, if you look, whether it's mathematics or alchemy, etc. So progress was made, and in this era, while there is their leadership, we're continuing, the humankind is continuing to make progress. Yes,
No, I
absolutely.
guess I'm
That
saying
rate of
how
yeah,
brutal this is, Sheikh. And this is
yes,
brutality. This thing
yeah,
is, and there is no,
yeah,
there's no love here. So
no, no.
but
Uh,
is there a need for security though, for people to feel like they can innovate and be part of things?
um, so there are. I mean, I can say, companies used to have companies that were very well structured, where people understood whether they were winning or losing.
Mm,
Meaning, I am doing well. I can see, because there was clear goals for what I need to do. I'm achieving them. I'm overachieving them. I'm being told I'm doing well, and you move forward that way. In today's world, people don't know if they're going to get fired or promoted.
oh,
That's in the corporate world today, and I'm talking especially so in the last few years. And that's what I mean. There is that culture of fear. Is what I've seen. Is people are basically, they're fearful of their jobs, and because of it, they will do some strange things. As an example, you'll see people that will they feel the need to basically always be working and show that they're working. All right, you'd see them sort of working crazy hours because they think that's the way to survive. You'll see other people that basically hoard everything. I do everything. They don't, they don't delegate, because the moment they feel they delegate, they feel their job's in fear. So those are some couple of examples, really, of
mm.
really what fear does within the organization. Going back to the innovation, absolutely, and innovation has happened, but it wasn't capitalism that drove the innovation.
No, that's an important point
Yeah.
here. So you're saying, I mean, this is the need for human beings in
Yes.
general to grow. They grew the way they do. Uh,
Absolutely.
Sheikh, when we talk about fear versus empathy,
Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
are both type of leaderships, are they needed, or one over the other?
No, Sheikh. I think the styles of leadership that I sort of touched on earlier, transformational, transactional, democratic,
Mm,
a good leader will use that as a toolkit. And
mm,
depending on the situation, you apply the type of leadership. There is a time, where you need to be democratic, where you're looking out for ideas, and you then listen to people and you drive consensus. Right? There are times, in times of crisis, where you have to be dictatorial. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. Right? But
mm.
the fear doesn't really come into leadership. They don't drive people through fear. It's more, inspirational or driving people or giving hope. It's very positive. That true leadership is actually very positive. Yes, of course, you need to have difficult conversations with people, etc. But it's really, it's very objective. It's based on facts and figures, etc. That this fear and driving people is basically, I don't know what it is, Sheikh. There may be some other things that are at play here. Really, I think maybe we should probably touch on that at some point as to really what is actually happening in the world, in the corporate world, and what's happening and why is it happening. And we can go to it, but let me just say this: that which is going to sound really odd. Today's corporate world isn't the main metric. Isn't profit.
Mm.
It is not just yes, it's an important metric, a goal that they have to be profitable. But actually, that's only one of few, and I don't think it's even a top metric. It's no longer about just making money. It is about social engineering. It's about all because you go to all the companies that do similar things. They drive things a similar way. So I think this is just more than, and I think then when you say that, then you've got to ask the question: why is that? What does it fit into? And I think then it becomes a really big question. And I think this is all to do with the fact that there is we are being driven, or really the whole system is being driven in a way to get towards a certain goal, right? So if you actually sit down and objectively look at what's happening, it was really odd for me when I realized some years ago, I was thinking, working company, thinking, this really isn't about profit. It's not just about profit. This is something else. This is more than just that. And I'll give you one good example, and a small example, and you know what I mean. Most companies, when they go to get loans, you'd think it's about their credit worthiness and how well their business is perceived to do. Actually, it's not. It's they have to have a certain profile. As an example, you've got to have certain diversity in your organization. If you fit that profile, you get favorable interest rates.
Oh, wow. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I heard about this, but I never believed that there are
No.
certain ethnicities they actually get a better. Some, if not 0%, is what I've heard too.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I mean, the actual companies themselves, if you fit a certain profile, if you've achieved certain things within your organization, you have certain demographics or you have certain colorful people, as an example. The people, when you go to get a loan, that's one of the things I look at, as an example, and that's one small example. And that's what I mean, it's not just about driving, it's not just about profit anymore. It's really a lot more than that.
Sheikh, I remember it's off. It's not on here, but I remember when we sat down, we had a good conversation. One of them you were talking about was, look, even uh, the way leadership is prepared today. I mean, the people involved
Yeah.
in this game, uh, they're very well put together. They're I guess the personality, the way it's groomed, things like this. Can you go into it a little bit just before we go into the next topic? I mean, because you've
Yeah.
done this, you yourself have done
Mm.
this. You train leaders.
Yeah, Sheikh. The you can. There are certain leaders that are just naturally inspirational,
Mm,
right? And there are there are a few out there, but you don't see them every time. But many of the leaders that you see out there, again, they basically follow a certain template. They are trained in a way, basically the way they speak, as an example, the things they say, how they look, etc. If you understand what to look for, so that certain markers, then you know actually this person is trained. And it's not just in the corporate world. I've seen this in some of the so-called Muslim personalities that you see. There's a way that they speak that okay, this person's had a certain type of training, right? So yes, it is. It's basically shift. It's like I said, it's a template, and people have just put through it, right, to get a certain type of an image.
Is that a good thing, Sheikh? Should the Muslim leadership today, example, I mean, today, people who are running organizations, people who are part of running, let's say, companies, organizations, leadership people, should they go through such a process?
Yes, but with a caveat, right? As I mentioned earlier, yes, absolutely learn the methodologies, learn the frameworks, right? But the important part is you've got to be very clear on what your value system is. Right? That's the important marker. You've got to make sure that your value system is intact. Of course, then you can go and learn how to speak well, etc. Are you if you don't have that, the world today says you do things to manipulate.
I see what
That's really what it's about, it's manipulation. But if you, as a Muslim, you have clear values, you have a clear value system that basically you follow. You do things in a better way because you have clear values and because you're achieving certain things that we're set out to achieve. But it's all very much, based on value. What value do you get? It's all very positive. So yes, I encourage it, Sheikh. Whether it's look at project management or program management, portfolio management, whatever it may be, whichever field that you're in, how to speak, as a leader, how to sort of talk, how to stand up. All of those things are important. Absolutely do so, but you have to make sure that you know what your values are as a Muslim, and then you protect them. That you don't use what you've learned outside of those parameters.
I mean, so there is a way to abuse that skill.
Yes, absolutely, Sheikh. It's a small example is I've mentioned before, something called neuro-linguistic programming, and it's not so much the NLP. NLP is really very sanitized, but it's the origins of it. And NLP really is about understanding the other person's cognitive mindset, and then because you understand that, your output behavior, the way you behave, you can read a lot into a person's mindset, internal cognitive mindset, right? And so if you don't have the values, what you do is you basically can use that and abuse it, and you can actually and with this technique, what you do is you look at where a person is in terms of their position, and then what you do is you drive them away from that to another position that is favorable to you, right? And you use the techniques and the conversations, etc. And again, some of these are well known. Some basic stuff that you look at a person and you do something called matching to build rapport, as an example. Or you look at how a person's sitting. Is this an open gesture, closed gesture? These are some very, very basic things that sort of So, but then beyond that, what do you do? And it's if you don't have the value system, then you are led into basically abusing this. You can make people do things they don't necessarily want to do uncomfortably.
Sheikh, I don't know if this type of training exists in the Muslim lands, but I'll give you an example though. Is a lot of times when we hear, at least reading from my readings, for instance, in Camp David, what I've heard is that when Arafat used to be brought in for negotiations with the Yahud and things like this, there would always be a table with certain types of food, even women, the way they serve, the way they, and then where the meeting is happening, the environment. It's Sheikh. I mean, when they bring, for instance, now the leaders that are coming to the U.S. The other day, Netanyahu came, and then now Indian Modi is here in now, and then Abdullah came. And so, Sheikh, I mean, do they bring him here? Are these tactics used? Number one. And number two, does the other side know that this is happening? And do they have a counter to this?
I think maybe only a few wise people do. But for the most part, I think leaders do know when they come here that there's something, that this is happening to them. But I think for the most part, they look forward to it. It's part of the rituals that they enjoy, right? It's part and parcel of, hey, this is how things are done, the pomp and ceremony, and this is almost sort of a, part and parcel of what they think is something that they are entitled to.
Sheikh, let's go to the next one. Understanding leadership KPIs. I think.
Yeah. So yes, this is we're talking about the mindset. I think we've spoken about the Sheikh. You've got to have a mindset that basically we're looking for growth all the time. We can go to the next slide, but I think we've spoken about this. Yes, key performance indicators. Again, coming back, sort of bringing it back into the business world. There's a saying that which goes that what gets measured gets done. Right? So it's very important that in whatever you're doing that you're measuring it. As an example, you're looking at, say, for example, organizational level. We are going to have a certain amount of turnover or an increase in turnover. We're going to look at increasing our profitability, EBITDA, etc. We're going to look at reducing our debt, whatever it may be. Or we're going to, basically, we're going to go to market and, with at least 3 new products. And then if you bring it all down, even in sort of even a simple team, as an example, even say, for example, in IT, that they have clear measures about how many, incidents that they have, how reliable their environment is, and how you measure that, right? So you've got to have clear metrics to say, okay, if we again, taking IT as an example, if something goes wrong, we're going to make sure we get it done in a certain amount of hours, an example, right? So each of the teams, whichever team you're in, has to have clear KPIs of basically, which tells them this is what good looks like, and you measure it, because what gets measured gets done. And then the other part from a high level leadership perspective, the other KPI is really how engaged are your employees, your team, right? How productive are they? And then also retention rate. How many of the people leave on a yearly basis from your team or your organization, your company, right? And then of course your customer satisfaction. The people that are your customers, how satisfied are you? How satisfied are they with you as well? So again, the main point really here is that in whatever it is you do, you need to make sure that you measure yourself, because what gets measured gets done.
I like that. What gets measured gets done. We have so much of that, Sheikh. Brother, if you can just bring back the screen for a moment. Sheikh, in Islam, accountability is such a big issue. I mean, Allah Azza wa Jal constantly is reminding us also, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. Sheikh, with all of this reading of the Quran, Sheikh, I mean, these are concepts, I mean, and we are going through them. Tell me, Sheikh, and when it comes to why are we not understanding these things, Sheikh?
Yeah, that's a good question, Sheikh. I mean, for me, I didn't truly understand leadership. Yes, I was in the corporate world, and you follow what others do, until I actually read, obviously and understood the Seerah of Prophet ﷺ, but also his companions of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and Umar and Uthman and Ali radiallahu anhu. I'd encourage people to go read their seerahs. Go look at Umar radiallahu anhu's seerah and the leadership, and but they were the product of an environment. That's really what we are. Whatever environment you have around you, you're a product of it. And Prophet told us, in the hadith about keeping company or friendship. If you have a friend that is a perfume seller versus a blacksmith, as an example, so it will have an influence on you. So you're a product of the environment that you're in. Where we are right now, Sheikh, is because we simply the environment is such that really we are far away from our deen. Yes, the rituals are there, but the essence of our deen, we're way far away from it. And really, that's something that I think needs to be fixed first. We need to create an environment, hopefully, for our next generation, and then you'll see the product of that environment. Right? That, in a simple sense, why? Because if you look at our leaders or the people that grow up in Muslims' land, they are Muslim majority lands, but they're not Muslim lands, right? They're people that have a colonized mind. The way they do things, the way they measure success is not a Muslim. It is what has been set for them by the colonizers. They even now, after so-called freedom, 70, 80 years later, the people aspire to be what their colonizers. It is a really odd thing, Sheikh.
So are the colonial masters doing a good job of leadership then, Sheikh?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're doing a good job of leadership.
I mean, from what you said, look, we want to be like our masters, it seems.
Yeah, well, they are doing a good job at manipulating us, controlling us. Absolutely. It's basically they have a very good grasp of how they've studied us and how we were drawn, but they've created the environment as such that basically we look up to them. They went in and destroyed what was good of ours, and they made us hate it, and they made us love what they are. As an example, again, I'll give some very small examples. The broad topics, but if you look at when the British took over India as an example, right? One of the things in Islam, if you look at, is having a turban, right? Mm. That was looked upon. That was a very good thing. So what they did was basically they gave a turban to a security guard at the gate.
Mm. True.
Right?
Yeah.
And so everyone's now saying, well, he's just a lowly security guy at the door. I don't want to be that. So whatever was good, they gave it to something, and that basically ended up, now...
when you say that, Sheikh, it's funny you say that, because in Kabul, in Kabul, where I went, we went to this, supposed to be a nice place to go and eat.
Yeah.
The one who's opening the door was wearing a suit.
That's really right. Very good reverse psychology.
And really, I just right when you just said this, I mean, I didn't think about it at all until you were saying it. I said, really, subhanallah, Sheikh, that's true. I mean, we don't even think about these things as how leaders or leadership is being portrayed.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really that's the issue, Sheikh, is that we need to sit down and sort of self-reflect. That's really the what we're missing in our world today in Muslims. We just follow, we look at what is cool. They want to be, you want to be seen of the people. Someone's doing something in a certain way that's cool, and therefore you want to be that. But just we don't have too many people that just sit and think and reflect and actually connect themselves back to the deen. That's what we're missing. And if someone was to ask me, what is the formula for us Muslims to be successful? It's for me, it's very simple. Oh, Muslims, be Muslims.
Mm.
That's it. Go back to the root.
But Sheikh, when you talk about social engineering, I mean, what is Islam or the Muslims are being socially engineered in this case? I mean, are you saying, look here, I guess let me ask you this. Secularism, obviously it has had its effects on us, in the way we think, in the way we behave, the way we dress. Like I was telling you about just my recent, just experience in Kabul. But in general in Kabul, like the first day when I got to Kabul, it was, right away they give you the shalwar khamis, and you have to, right away dress a certain way because we're going to meet certain, dignitaries or whatever it is, people, imams and scholars in the community, if you're going for an opening of a masjid or something like this. But it was funny. I was with a professor the whole time, and he told me, brother Shirazi, this was not the case 5 years ago or 4 years ago. all of us would wear tie and a suit because he's a university, Kabul University, such and such. And he said, everything has changed within 4.5 years. I mean, leaderships, do they do social engineering, Sheikh? I mean, is this something that is part of leadership that, it's done as part of changing the environment?
Absolutely, yeah. This comes under the banner of culture. Right? And having a culture as a leader is probably one of the most important things.
Interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And this is what it is. And again, if you look at, for example, if you have a Muslim mindset, you look at what was the Muslim culture, what the Prophet do, what the Sahaba do, what the first 2 generations do, and you look to see, what they defined as success, and you take that and you say, this is our culture, right? And then you make sure that you give it the right level of exposure. You make it look good. And then
also,
people
that could be country or company.
And anything, Sheikh, anything, absolutely. I'm talking at any level. You look at, the change that you want to inspire. You find the people that are change agents, and then you give them a platform. So you look at people as if you look, if you want to make, if you're going through, organizational change, it's something called organizational change management, OCM. It's an important part of actually, engineering or changing organizations. But one of the things here is that you look at, the people react in 3 ways as you change the organization. There will be the people who will love this change. These are your change agents. There'll be a middle group, most people that are basically undecided. They need more data, and most of the people. And then you've got a group of detractors. For those that are change agents, you give them a platform. You give them position and platforms and say, this is what good looks like. The middle group, you basically walked, you talk to them, you try and obviously take them through that journey. And the detractors, you ring fence and you drive out.
Sheikh, change agents, you choose them or do they appear? I mean,
no, so actually, most of the time in organization, they appear. So what you said, what you do is you go in and you introduce an idea to say we're going to change something, change an organization, right? You will find people that just naturally resonate towards it. To say, what, this makes sense to me. This inspires me. I like this, right? And those people, you don't have to do anything. These are almost, your salespeople. You don't have to do much. And all you do is you basically give, like I said, you give them a platform, you give them positions, you give them exposure, you make sure that they have enough airtime. And it's really it's about seeding. You seed them, and they basically inspires those around them.
Oh, subhanallah. This is called OCM.
Organization change management.
Sheikh, let's go to the next. I guess we're talking about trust in the foundation.
Yes, Sheikh. So creating high-performing teams. This is, again, something that I've seen only a few leaders do well. And that's to do really with trust. You've got to create trust in your team. What trust really means is that basically that you hold yourselves accountable for whatever's being done, right? And you also trust each other. And what I mean by that is you have some leaders that basically, they have a fear of basically only I can do this right. And the people below you or the people that work as part of your team, you don't really delegate to them, or whatever they do, you question it, right? So trust is important to say that if I'm the leader, the people that I have working on my team, I trust them. And so therefore, when they make decisions, I trust the decisions they make, and you empower them to do so, right? So that's really the trust as foundation. A shared vision, again, this is very, very important. It's got to, everyone has to be very clear on what good looks like. They all have to agree on what good looks like. And that's what a leader does, is to say, you know what, this is what good looks like. They're very clearly articulated, and, this is how we get there. So, you've got to have a clear vision, and then you've got to make sure that everyone has a same idea of what that looks like as well. And then again, I've mentioned accountability. You've got to hold yourself accountable. You've got to recognize, you've got to, people that do well and celebrate them. And then you support the people, that provide the best. Whatever you see, performance, something that's been done well, you basically highlight it and you say that is good, and then you basically look, well, how can we do more of it, right? So that's really the some of the traits or some of the ways you can create high performing teams. But that again, it's easier said than done, because a lot of the time the leaders that you see in organizations don't quite get that. They use some primitive techniques that again of do this, and that drive them, and they don't provide clear direction. So I think this is going to be, if you want to make sure that you're working in a team that's high performing, that you make sure that you create trust, you share the vision, and then you make sure you hold yourselves accountable.
Sheikh, let's go back to it, because I have very important questions here to ask you regarding just that issue itself. If we can go back and say, Sheikh, I'm sure this went through your mind. In the last 50 years, let's say, I mean, we have had people like Israr Ahmed. We've had people like Abu Ala al-Maududi. We had Sayyid Qutb. We had Hassan Banna. We had Taqiyuddin Ibhani. We had Umar Mukhtar. We had so many, let's say last 50, 100 years. Today, Sheikh, I mean, with such level of crisis that the Ummah is going through, I mean, we can hardly point to anyone and say, this person can lead us.
Yeah.
What happened here, Sheikh? I mean, were they not able to provide a vision? Was this, you see what I'm asking you? I mean, it's maybe some type of an analysis, maybe you something to think about.
I think it is, Sheikh. I mean, it really is. It's as simple as what I mentioned earlier. We are a product of our environment. And what you grow up in is, the more fertile the field, the better the crop. But if you look at where, again, even in the Muslim majority countries, the system, the people, what they aspire to, or how they've been corrupted, it just hasn't been the environment that sort of has produced great leaders or scholars. It's just not been there. As an example, if you look at, I won't name any countries, but former colonized countries, Muslim majority countries, but they are corrupt to the core. And I don't just mean the leadership. And by the way, people always blame the leaders, but the leaders aren't aliens. They came from the people. The people produce those leaders. But if you look, as an example, again, I don't want to name countries, but if you go to certain countries, everything's corrupt. Yes, politicians, of course, corrupt. The system they have in place is corrupt. It's all bribery and whatnot. But even the ordinary people, they are corrupt. They're corrupt in their transactions that they do. Whether you go to a fruit seller or whatever it is, you're going to get. They're going to basically try and con you. And so, really, at every level, there's that corruption. And for them, to be successful, this is how you do it. You go about it in a corrupt way. So if you think about it, step back and think, well, what is that going to produce? In an environment like that, what is that going to produce? What good can come out of that? Right?
I mean, so Sheikh, okay, when you look at Gaza, I guess the whole world today will only look at Gaza for leaders. Is that? I mean. That's when you talk about environments, right, Sheikh Hani? I had a khutbah somewhere today, and there's a lot of brothers were from Palestine, and so we were discussing what's happening in Gaza. And so one of the questions that I asked, I said, if this man who wants to now buy Gaza, well, he's not even saying he's going to buy it; he just belongs to them. So. But something that the brother, he said, the Gazans, they're not like us. And he's from Ramallah, and West Bank and kind of thing. And he was saying, if that offer was there to the West Bank people, at least I can tell you maybe about 15% of the population of Gaza, of West Bank might actually leave with that offer. But Gaza, they will fight to the last man. But Sheikh, is that, what is that? I mean, is that sacrifice? We went off here, Sheikh.
Are we offline?
No. Oh man. Can you hear me, Sheikh?
I can hear you.
You can hear me. Hold on. Something happened here. But we'll come back. Just one second.
No problem.
Oh, subhanallah. Somebody doesn't like what we're talking about. No, I'm saying. No. Go ahead, Sheikh. If you can comment on this, though, leadership-wise, right? I mean, you have a people who are willing to give everything that they have. Do you expect leadership to come out of places like Gaza?
Yes, absolutely.
You do.
Absolutely.
Even though there's nothing there.
But
describe environment. Here's what I'm asking. Describe environment to me. What do you mean by the environments are producing us? And then you said, look, Gaza, we could. Why?
Yes.
Describe that for
me. It comes down to, Sheikh, what is the value system that is governing or driving those people? What is the value system, right? If you look at, and again, we're talking about the ordinary people of Gaza.
Yes.
They have come up through who knows how many years of adversity and hardship. And for them, the deen is their value system. That is what drives them for the most part. That is, if you like, they have been under constant attack. And for them, really, the deen is the most precious thing, and they turn to it. And they see that as really, so it's the Muslim value system that exists there, and don't people shouldn't mistake that for worldly appearance, like Dubai as an example, right? It's not about that. It's not about the worldly.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. It's about, that is, I'm trying to figure out when you say the environment. Go ahead.
I'm talking about value. I'm talking about really the value system. What do people, what drives them? What are they being told is good, right? Versus, hey, this is what good looks like. You've got to chase the dunya, etc. They haven't been doing that. They've lived in adversity, and really, out of adversity, you'll find some of the finest people that come out, because their focus really isn't about the dunya. It's just, if you look at them, subhanAllah, so many of the innocent people that were killed there, and you see their relatives or their parents or their mothers. The world has seen it, and it's amazed the world. That they have their trust in Allah. That's what they turn to. Trust in Allah. Turn to Allah. And that's really what it is. It's so their value system that governed and drove them, that how they grew up, is what determines really the output. That's how
they determined people. They is that being determined, being wanting to achieve something? Is this?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm not an expert in sociology, but if I sort of reflect upon, if you look at, as an example, the people that have, the Muslims in certain countries of the West, say the UK, they have generated a different type of a Muslim that I see in a lot of places. And I think back upon it and I think I understand why. It's because really, if I was born there, grew up there. It's an environment where you are because you firstly you knew you're coming to a colonizer land, so there was already you know what you are, you know what they are. But then the other thing is basically that you were otherized, and that otherizing of you, then you start to think about, well, what am I? Right. I'm a Muslim, and subhanAllah, Allah knows best, but it's just created an environment where you basically hold on to your values and start to dig into it. And the strange thing is, it's something that I thought about, is that the people who migrated, or their parents and children, even their values, it's almost in a bubble. So if your parents migrated from a certain country 40 or 50 years ago, and you were born in the country, you have your parents' old values, cultural values. it's almost, if you go back to the country of origin of your parents now, you find that you're slightly old-fashioned because they've moved on with the world, and you sort of kept the values of your parents for maybe 40, 50 years ago. It's really an odd phenomenon that I've seen, Sheikh. But it happens. But I think it's to do with that. It's that maybe it's adversity, it's being otherized, it's maybe that focus that you think about, well, what am I? Right? I'm in this country, they are saying I'm not them, I'm not as equal to them, then you start to think about, well, what am I? Right? And maybe that drives the focus. Wallah.
Sheikh, I'm going to read you a quote. This is from Haaretz newspaper, from the one of the so-called Israeli newspaper. It says, Israel is throwing 1 trillion shekels at a hysterical army that can't defend its borders. And then, and of course, you're talking about an army that is fighting a group of people. Right? I mean, this is not an organized army. This is not.
No,
and then
no.
it says, failing to safeguard its borders, Israel tries to conquer territory as a defensive tactic. And this is really interesting. And then says, whose success is highly questionable. The IDF has lost its self-confidence, says a veteran military historian. This is very interesting to see, Sheikh, that a group of very determined people in the face of such a brutal force, a superpower behind them, all of West behind them, traitor rulers behind them, and they have been able to, for over a year and a half, defend their people and defend and then an army. But here is an army that 1 trillion shekels. Its own people are talking that there is no confidence here. So, Sheikh, I mean, when you talk about leadership here, because this has a lot to do with leadership, what kind of leadership would Israel, or the leadership of Israel, fit in?
That's
a big question. I know.
That's a good question. Yeah. I think, look, firstly, the effects that they're feeling in the army, I would put down as simply, imagine a group of people that just ate bad food, unhealthy food. It shows in your body, right? You could see it. In the same way, if you do what they've been doing, killing the innocent, it has an impact. It may not be an outward one, but internally, emotionally, it destroys people, just like bad food does. Again, a simple example. In terms of their leadership, I think they have a very clear idea of what they want to achieve, right? And they are doing their damn best to do everything and anything that they can by hook or crook, mostly by hook or crook. But Allah is not letting them succeed. Allah is not letting them succeed. That's just really what's happening. But if you look at it from the outwards, if you look at it from a real sort of secular perspective, yeah, they are using all the techniques, all the technology, everything that they can, whether they have it or they manipulate their allies to do it, but they have everything at their disposal, and it seems they just can't succeed, and Allah knows best. But I think we have many examples of that. Again, if we go back to the story of Sahaba, the Prophet sometime, it really is. It's just as simple as that comparison. You've got a group of people.
Sheikh, go ahead. So say what you're saying.
A group of people that are just righteous, that are in the right, that have not. They're basically trying to live their life, and then you have another group of people that are just going to come and colonize and take their lands and kill them and abuse them. And that has a consequence.
Sheikh, how much does religiosity? I mean, I don't want to sound, secular here, but okay. So I'll. Here's the thing. So there was a discussion. It seems like it happened in a synagogue, and there was, I forgot the name of the author. It's something about Jerusalem. I think Return to Jerusalem or something Jerusalem. So it's happening in a synagogue. I think 99% of the population that was listening, audience, is all Jewish. if not Zionist, because they were very clear about their stance and things like this. But the author said that, look, here's the thing. The people that we are fighting, this is what he says, they are very passionate about their religion. But the Jews are missing that passion. And so then the questioner asked, the person that was interviewing this person says, do you think that we have to go back to our religion? I mean, is this something that's going to happen where people will have to go to their religion? And then he said, well, yeah, maybe that Judeo-Christian thing, but they don't understand if that kind of passion they'll be able to get, So it was very interesting to hear from them, them having this conversation within themselves in a synagogue. They're sitting in a supposed house of God. That's what the guy was saying. He said, look, we are at the end of the day sitting in a house of God. And we are saying that those people are so passionate about their religion. So let me ask you this, Sheikh. What does, when we say this type of belief, a belief system, what is the effect on leadership when it comes to a belief system?
I think what you firstly, just to go back to the point you made about what they were saying, they were simply observing from a peoples whose hearts Allah has sealed. So they're simply looking at it from an outward perspective. Hey, they're praying and they're doing certain rituals, and therefore that must mean because we can't defeat them, it must be because they do that. Right? They don't understand that it's the truth. Right? It is haqq. It is the true life. That's really what it is. It's from Allah. The basics of it, that's what it is. But to what extent does the real, any idealism that you have has an impact on a leader? Whether you go to communism, yes, you have ideals, you follow them, and then they have an impact on you. It can be, you don't have to be necessarily a religious person or a Muslim, but if you do certain things, you can still benefit from them on an outwardly worldly basis. But to again go back to that point of what they're making, it's their hearts are sealed, they're blind, they look at this, but they're not seeing the truth, which is basically the people of God are the people that follow the religion of Prophet ﷺ. That's really what it is. It's haqq. It's following the haqq. They don't get, and those that Allah guides, you see them, so many of them, because of Gaza. You see so many people just take shahada all the time. They just look at these people and thinking, wow, there's something here. And so those people that who Allah opens their hearts, they just look at a few of these things and saying, oh wow, this is the truth. So
but how does leadership present that, Sheikh?
In what sense, Sheikh?
I guess when we today, our leadership, we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have leadership like that today, unless maybe in certain places, that you can pinpoint maybe, but. Meaning, I guess I'm asking, is this like you? And you said something. This is ideal, or every organization has these ideals.
Yes. So basically, what I would call a value. Basically, they have a value system, right? They have guiding principles to create a culture. But really, I think when it comes to leaders. And why? I think the question is, why aren't we getting the leaders, from Muslims that are of any value?
I mean, people are they're observing this, right? They're observing. They're outsiders are observing, looking to us, and they're saying these guys are something else. They're willing to die for what they believe in. They're so passionate about it. They have such a level of conviction and this and that. But Sheikh, I guess that's only when people are looking at Gaza. They don't feel or see that when they're looking at the rest of the Muslim world.
No, that's true. That's very true. And because it's just not there, Sheikh. It just isn't there. We are doing what they are doing. We're not even as good as them at it. To be honest with you, what are we doing? We're trying to chase the dunya, trying to do whatever they're doing, building the wealth. That's what they see us. What are
chasing
we doing
after the same things that they're chasing after, and this
Absolutely.
cannot be leadership like this. Then
that cannot be. No, absolutely not. We are following what everyone else is following. What separates you? We behave like them. We act like them. Wear the same clothes like them. We just it, so what? Why are you special? We're
So
not.
you
Again,
have
we're
to be
not.
different. Sheikh, you have to be different.
Not necessarily different, but you have to be truthful to the deen.
Or whatever
You
it is
have
that
to be
you believe in.
truthful. Yes, but I think you have to specifically for Islam because of the truth.
Mm.
Specifically for Islam. Again, a small example. Let's look at Khabib. He's not a scholar, the MMA fighter.
Mm.
But subhanAllah, he whatever he understands of the deen, he is true to it. You see him as small examples of it. And people look at that, and that's Allah has all. I think it's innate in people. They look at something that is truth, and they recognize it and they resonate towards it as something good. Right? That's what it is. You don't see that anyway. The so-called leaders of Muslim. What do? They just dress like the rest of them. They lie, cheat people, deceive the dictators.
So what, Sheikh? The Muslims are not sincere?
Well, no, look, not for all of them, no. Of course, this is a matter of sincerity, Sheikh. Of course it's true. Yes. Yeah, you've got to look, if you look at it very objectively, Sheikh, most of us just are ritualistic.
Mm.
We do the rituals, but we're not true to it, Sheikh. We're not true to our deen. That's what I said. If you want to make sure that we have the izzah that we used to have, my call is, oh Muslims, be Muslims, right? But then go and understand what Muslims were. The how we do our business here, and see some of them. And I don't want to sound so negative because there is, I see, there are also sort of positive, offshoot, basically green shoots that are out there that I'm seeing that I think, alhamdulillah, inshallah, will come. It's just a matter of time, right? So I also, and I want to sort of turn to the positive. Yes, we all accept the state that we're in, and it's the Prophet told us, wahan, right? We love the dunya and we hate to die. That's really the state of us and why we're in. But if you look at some of the Greek, I look at, for example, the generations, maybe over the last 3 or 4 generations, from the perspective of Islam, they are getting better. Our youngsters are better than we were from the perspective of our deen. They have Islamic schools that they go to. Their parents cared a little, so they're more passionate. And our generation is better, slightly, generally speaking, than our parents' generations were, who sort of grew up at the time of colonizers, etc., etc. So I see that. I think, alhamdulillah, there is a positive move forward, inshallah. And as we create more and more that environment, something good will come out of it, inshallah.
Inshallah. Let's do this last 2 things, Sheikh, and then we'll go because there's a lot more to go. But I think we're gonna have to do session 2. But let's finish this slide. A shared vision ensures motivation and alignment. Sheikh, let's go back. Let's just finish those 2 points. This is very important points.
Yes, that's.
Zain, we gotta get back to that. There you go. Jazakallah. No. The next, this one? Or okay, fine.
I'll talk about the shared vision, why it's important, Sheikh. It's if you look at it, from just a general leadership perspective, I think I touched on it earlier. Everyone in the team has to know what good looks like. They have to understand what their purpose is, and it has to be agreed upon, right? They all know this is what we're going to do. This is why we're here. This is what we're doing. This is how we're going to get there. That shared vision has to be the same across the world. If you across the team, if you look at if you bring it back, to the state of the Muslims today, that doesn't exist, unfortunately. Because we don't really have, or the leadership's not there, or has not been allowed to develop. We're all trying to. Maybe we're sincere in what we're trying to do, but we're all doing different things to what we think. It's basically an individual concept of what good looks like. I believe something good, so I'm going to do something, and another person believes that's good, and so they do it. And so there isn't that alignment, right? And so we're not building that critical mass to basically bring about a change. That's why having that shared vision is very, very important.
Mm.
Again, action plan. Yeah, you have a vision. You've got to have a clear action plan. You've got to You tell people what good looks like, you visualize it for them, then you have to give them a path of how you get there, right? And then you have to inspire them, because as you go through that journey, you're going to go, through ups and downs, and you've got to, wherever they are, you've got to continue to say, okay, this is where we are, we've got more to go, and whatever, if there's a blocker that comes in their way, that you look at, how to make sure that you have the solution mindset, that you overcome it. You don't sit there and look at and basically complain about something went wrong. A solution, and that's a solution mindset versus a problem mindset. Problem mindset will look at a problem and they'll just stare at it and they'll talk about the problem. Look, it's a problem. A solution mindset says, this is a problem, how do we get around it, right? So it's important from an inspiration perspective as well.
So this is accountability, recognition, support, and enhanced performance. Hold on. So, Sheikh, let's go back to this thing, and then we'll come back to part 2 of this, because there's no way there's a lot going on here.
Sure.
So, Brother Zain, if you can just bring us back here, Sheikh, if just 2 more questions.
Sure.
Looking at the leadership that we have today, I mean, colonial setup that's there. I mean, a shared vision ensures motivation and alignment, right? Yes. And then it says accountability, recognition, support, and enhanced performance. So what do we do, Sheikh? I mean, when we're looking at what do we do with the Muslim world, Sheikh? And you change what now in order to bring this type of a team into existence?
I think you have to continue the work on a grassroots level, whether that's through da'wah, through, again, an individual, what can I do with my family, with a group of people that I know in the local community. We have to continue the work at the grassroots level. I believe, and Allah knows best, that, that the conditions are right. We have seen over maybe the last 25, 30 years, more and more Muslims have realized what the game is. Right? They understand what's happening to them more and more. And I believe, if there is we have a leader or that has the right values, Islamic values, I think what you'll find is that people will follow.
So I think are you saying that the people are, because they no longer share that vision, because it's, to have this type of team, or let's say if you're leading a country here, a shared vision. So you're saying what, the people no longer share the vision of their leadership?
They do not. No, I think that there has been a lot of mistrust for a very long time to say something's not right. Right? But things have happened in the last 20, 30 years, 20 years probably, where the game is now very apparent. It's very obvious to the people. It's clear, yeah. And people sort of understand what is happening to them. And because of that, I think there's now I think we see there's definitely a willingness on the Muslims for the change in the right direction, inshallah.
So is that a natural thing, Sheikh? Does that happen in teams also, where people just say that no matter what I do, I don't share the vision of
It happens where you don't have the right leadership. Yes, you see that in organizations as well. So, if you have a leader that only has their own personal goals and they're driving towards that, as an example, you will see that, leaders that basically will drive their teams so they can look good, right, for their own benefit. Or there are leaders that basically what you call flip-flop. They'll say one thing 1 minute and something else another minute. It just makes no sense, right? They don't have a clear vision. There's no alignment of it. And after a while, people just become, either they become disillusioned and they just detach from it. So they just, exist because they have to come to work and make an earning, but they don't really believe in what's been said. Right, because they don't, it doesn't resonate with them. It doesn't make sense to them. Yes, absolutely happening in companies too.
Wow. So disillusionment usually means that no more sharing of.
Yeah, there's basically they are disenfranchised, which means they're just separated, from whatever the leadership or corporate world is and what their interests are. They're just,
do you think the Americans today in this country? Let's come back just a little bit to this country here. the Americans, they share the vision of Donald Trump? I mean, does Donald Trump have a vision? Does he have? Do you see him having a vision? I mean, I make America great again, fine, but is that a vision, Sheikh? Is that something that?
Sheikh, there is an occult saying, in the land of blind, the one-eyed man is king. And I don't know Allah. That for me is basically a coin phrase for Dajjal, but it really, I think the people are so fed up.
Okay.
People are so fed up, Sheikh, that they are clutching at straws. Anything that comes along that sounds remotely good, they're saying yes, please, because there's just everything else around them is just so corrupt. They don't believe in it. There's distrust. So if someone comes along and basically says some messages that resonates with them, they have no other choice. There's nothing else, and so they clutch at straws. Oh, well, do you know what? That sounds good. In reality, maybe nothing, but do you know what? It's better than what I hear, around me. So therefore, let's try this one out.
Sheikh, but when you guys are, I mean, this is your work. You do leadership based. This is, you make a living doing this. But when you're looking at this leadership, someone who's, let's say, authorized, somebody who's responsible for building leadership. When you look at Trump, right? Can you use him? Will you use him to build other leaders?
You might use him in a textbook of how not to do some things, probably. But joking aside, I think Donald Trump is simply a caricature of all the other leadership around us, around the world.
Around the world.
Yes, and especially in the West. He's just a caricature. Right?
So, and you're considering the world to be the environment.
Yes, absolutely. Look at look at the West, the East, wherever it may be. He's simply a caricature of all the other leaders around us. He is a bit more, outlandish in what he said. He may not say things in a politically correct way, but in terms of the action, it's no different than the others. Really. He sounds odd when he says, for example, I'm going to take Gaza. Well, that's what they've been trying to do a long time.
There's no political rhetoric.
They were sort of, doing it on the quiet or talking about it in a some politically correct way, and not to, I think people for him that filter is not there. So he says, okay, so we're trying to achieve this. Let's go for it. Let's forget the talk and let's go for it.
But is that leadership? That some might consider that to be good leadership. No, I mean, obviously for us, we know what we're going through now. But for the other side, is that good leadership? Hey, we're going to define the objective and let's just do it.
I mean, it's certainly absolutely shit. It's leadership. Let's sort of cut out the noise and let's just cut to the chase and let's move forward. Yes, absolutely. And I'll also say this as well, Sheikh, that. I'm not, I don't understand why people are so surprised at some of the things that he's saying. It's what he said he would do, and he's doing it. There's also, a talk about why is he doing certain things to the Muslim world. But for him, that was, if you look at the first term, he said he was going to do it, and he's doing it. Why do we? I don't understand. Some of this, I understand there's the frustration, but I don't understand why there's so much confusion in Muslim land in terms of what he's doing. From his perspective, he's doing what he thinks is right for his country, right? And that means basically dealing with the Muslims the way he's dealing with them, or anyone else. Right?
Is that the organizational? I mean, is that? Final question, I promise. This is. Organizational structures do this, Sheikh? I mean, is this why he has to be like this? He's saying that, look, I mean, it would be very interesting. I mean, I wanted to even bring in some of the the methods of Chinese leadership. I didn't do, I mean, unfortunately, maybe the next time I'll have to bring that in there. when you look at China, Sheikh, I mean, the Chinese are. A statement came out of Chinese leadership saying that we can win this without fighting. Is that what is that, Sheikh? That's also what thought leadership.
Yes, I mean they would have observed what's going on, and I think from their perspective, what this means is this is a diminishing empire. That's the way they look at it, I think. This is an empire that is in its decline. We just have to help and aid the decline.
Wait it out.
Wait it out and basically aid in the decline of it, right? And try and avoid any conflict, and it will eventually fall by the wayside. That's from the statement, it seemed that that's what they're thinking.
Meaning, don't get involved, stay behind.
But almost in a way,
another question. Leadership does that. Do leadership? They just sometimes say, "This is going to fall on the wayside, so let's just hold on."
That is Sheikh. That is that is what they call critical thinking. That is looking at a strategic thought process. It's not just about what is in front of you and reacting to it, but also looking beyond and then basically making decisions about what ifs. Right? But certain things you look at from a leader perspective and you see things, this is heading in a certain way. This has the traits of it's going to turn a certain way, good or bad. Right? And you make decisions on that. And then that statement to me, and who knows what that means, but to me that means that they feel that this is an empire in decline. Therefore, and ours as one, basically they see themselves as ascending, right? Because that's what they've seen in the last 20 years. And so they think that's what's going to happen. So therefore, wait it out, let it decline further, and then we will basically, even if we continue to do as we are, we'll probably just rise above them.
Okay. All right, Brother Muhammad, this is, we're going to have to do part 2 of this for sure, this one, because we still have a few other amazing slides that we really need to go through, and we need to go through. And I would actually now, next time, inshallah, I guess I'm going to try to figure out how, what the Chinese are doing. What are they doing that's working for them? I mean, as far as leadership is concerned, I mean, their ways, their tactics, their character, their attributes, inshallah Rabbil Alameen. But Jazakallah khair, Brother Muhammad, for your time and for your, I mean, this type of discussions are needed, brother, really. And not only this type of discussions, but if you're going to help build the next generation, they need to study leadership. I mean, your background is studying leadership, isn't it? Right? I mean, is this what you studied?
Sheikh, so for me, very early on, I was lucky that some of the first roles that I had was simply at a leadership level, and so learning how to be a leader, etc., right from the offset. So I've been sort of leading people, leading teams for the best part of 20 years or more.
Do you recommend certain things? Do you recommend certain books, certain things that people should read in order to understand, especially those who are in positions of leadership?
Yeah, for me, firstly, I would actually, for Muslims, I would recommend you go read the Seerah of Prophet and also basically the Guide of Khalifs. Right, look at it from a leadership perspective. What that gives you, nothing else will. But then, at today's world, I would ask really our brothers and sisters to focus on getting educated in methodologies and frameworks. Right? That is important. How do you actually do something in a structured, methodical way? That's what's missing. We think we may have visionaries, but in terms of execution and doing something and actually achieving their goal, we lack the methodologies, the structure, frameworks. I would encourage go out there, even if it's as simple as project management. You can use that in your day-to-day life too. As an example. But there's whatever you're interested in. Ask yourself a question. I want to do something. Is there a methodology of doing it that I can go and learn? And that would be my advice to them. Is basically learn methodologies, frameworks, whatever. Learn a structured way of whatever it is you want to do.
Inshallah. All right, brother. Jazakallah khair. And Allahumma barik, Shaykhi. And inshallah, I can't wait for the next time. And for the rest of you, brothers and sisters, Jazakallah khair for attending, for listening. Inshallah, this was an eye-opening discussion for many of you. Also, brothers and sisters, as you know, Ramadan is right around the corner. Literally, maybe 2 weeks left. Make sure to follow the space. Islamic Oasis is a very active, especially in the Ramadan, gets even more active. Come to the center, volunteer, be part of the iftar projects that we are doing across Ramadan, throughout Ramadan, and come and help in any way that you can. And inshallah, follow what's going on different podcasts talking about Ramadan and the month of Ramadan, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Assalamu
alaikum. Shaykh.
لا لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر لا 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 لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر صبح بدا نور ظهر نجم وشمس وقمر ألقى على الدنيا الدرر هذا عمر هذا عمر كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر هذا عمر هذا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا عمر لا لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا